截至12月9号，今年全国汽车以旧换新补贴申请合计突破500万份。
As of this Monday, applications to trading used cars for new ones have surged past 5 million this year, a clear sign of the growing popularity of China's trading for new policy.
同比增长16.5%，增速较10月加快。
Many consumers say the program has encouraged them to make car purchases sooner than planned, fueling a noticeable boost in demand. Experts predict that this policy could increase China's retail growth by as much as 1.8% in 2024, with the ripple effects particularly strong in sectors like automobiles and home appliances. But how exactly does this policy work? Why has it struck such a chord with Chinese consumers? And what does it mean for the broader consumer market and the country's economy? My colleague Dou Hongyu joins this episode to delve into these questions. It's Thursday, December 12th. So, Hongyu, have you ever traded in your old items for new ones?
Our family bought a new car last month. We were one of the 5 million. We scrapped an old car produced in 2010 for a new electric car from BYD. At the beginning of the year, we knew we needed a car, but we were hesitating and we were procrastinating until we heard about the policy that if you scrap a certain type of conventional vehicle to buy an EV, you can get a national subsidy of 20,000 yuan. That's over 2,800 US dollars. And the deadline is the end of this month. We were afraid that if we missed the deadline, we would not be able to enjoy such a price deduction. The car company also has its own package of subsidies. So we got an extra 8,000 yuan from the trading process, which had been added to the national subsidy, the 20,000 yuan. And in the end, the deduction we got covered over 10% of the car price. That is already a lot for us.
Oh, 10% off on the original price. Do you think this is why this policy of trading for new has become so common in China?
Yes, I think we can represent a lot of other families who are purchasing new products. As far as I can see, the car stores are getting more and more crowded as the time is approaching the end of the year. I think this is mainly because the government is encouraging the trading process, and the purpose is to unleash the potential for consumer spending. For example, if you need a new hair dryer and you happen to have something that is collecting dust somewhere in your house, like an old phone that you haven't been using for a really long time, but it's still not bad enough to be thrown away, you can trade in your phone to get a price cut when buying a hair dryer. And it's good to know that the old phone won't end up in the trash can. So the trading for new policy is encouraging people like us to buy what they want at a lower price.
I think many people are in that dilemma when you have a functioning home appliance, but at the same time you want an upgrade on the old model. So how long has this policy been enforced in China, and has it been effective in, quoting from you, unleashing the consumer spending power?
Well, it started this March when the government announced an action plan to help households and businesses upgrade their old machinery. The campaign covers a wide range of things, from heavy industries like steel to replacing old elevators in residential buildings, to incentives for consumers to scrap their old air conditioners and buy new ones that use less electricity. And then in April and July, China announced details for trading subsidies in the car industry, like what I mentioned, the price cut of 20,000 yuan. And the policies have manifested themselves in the consumer market. In the automobile industry, for example, according to an investigation, trade-ins has become one of the main demands in car purchasing in 2024. And 1/3 of the respondents said the coupons and subsidies are the direct reason for them to buy new cars.
Okay.
The investigation also shows that the trading for new policy has accelerated the replacement of old car models and lifted the proportion of new energy vehicles. And let's see how the car industry performed this year. In the first 3 quarters, the production and sales of EVs in China both grew over 30% year on year. And the trading for new policy has also boosted online shopping, not just in physical stores. Let's take the platform JD.com. The growth rate of its revenue in the second quarter was only 1.2%. Then in July, more details about the trading policies were released. And as a result, in the following quarter, the growth rate of JD's revenue was quadrupled from the second quarter to reach 5%.
Okay.
And the third quarter is not even a hot season for online shopping in China. So experts have attributed this to the detailed policies announced earlier this year. And all the figures show that people in China are buying more, and that is stimulated by the trading policy.
Okay, so there have been many actions and subsidies from the government to promote this trading for new policy in China. Why is boosting consumption such a priority for China's economic works?
That is closely related to the current international and domestic demand. The global economic downturn has led to a significant reduction in market demand and insufficient consumer confidence. And this has caused the imports of goods and services to decrease. China is an important global export country. When the global demand is weak, expanding domestic demand can provide stable support for its economic growth and counter the impact of global economic fluctuations on the Chinese economy. And apart from weaker demands, we've also seen the rise of trade protectionism over the years. Countries are implementing measures such as increasing tariffs and setting trade barriers to protect their domestic industries and employment. And the tariffs the United States is to impose on the Chinese products are expected to be higher following the US presidential election. So this has made it more challenging for Chinese export enterprises. In this case, expanding domestic demand can help the Chinese economy to be less dependent on the external trading environment. And on the other hand, in China, people are not buying as actively as expected. Their willingness and ability to spend money need improving. And that is why boosting consumption is critical for China's economy. And expanding domestic demand has been quite an important issue discussed at China's top political and economic meetings over the past few years. But at the same time, we can see that those meetings are putting more and more emphasis on domestic consumption. For example, the Central Economic Work Conference a year ago said one of the priorities in 2024 is to expand domestic demand, and it was listed right after sci-tech innovation. But when the CPC leadership discussed the economic work in 2025, a few days ago, they used more proactive wording, not just to expand domestic demand, but to do it on all fronts. It indicates that the stimulation efforts will be on a more massive scale. And this time it is mentioned ahead of sci-tech innovation, which means that domestic consumption is being further prioritized.
So based on the achievement in boosting consumption this year, we may be expecting that next year there will be even more policies released to support the consumer market. So in this economic downturn around the globe, many countries have been trying to encourage their domestic consumers spend more money. But in China, why, instead of giving money directly to the consumers, why is the government encouraging consumption through this policy of trading for new? I wouldn't mind getting some cash.
But Chinese people are more willing to save their money. Of course, everybody loves money, but instead of spending it, Chinese people would be more likely to put them in the banks.
Yes, I would.
Yeah, data shows that Chinese people save about 45% of their disposable income. That is over 10 times the savings rate of the British and American people. So the money you give to the Chinese residents is very likely to end up in the banks instead of in the market. But apart from the trading policies, China is also using many other policies to expand domestic demand. For example, the country is reducing personal income tax. So if people have more money at hand, they're more likely to spend it. And also increasing investment in infrastructure is also effective. It can not only create job opportunities, but also facilitate the flow of logistics and information. And this will drive the consumption of related industries. When necessary, a country may adopt easier monetary policies to increase money supply. This year's Central Economic Conference says China plans to adopt moderately loose monetary policy next year. Last time China applied moderately loose monetary policy was about 1.5 decades ago, in 2009 and 2010, to go through the global economic crisis. And in the following years, we used prudent monetary policies. So now it's anticipated that China will lower interest rates so that people will put less money in the bank and be more willing to buy something or to invest. So now there is a whole package of policies to make people open their wallets.
So this policy does sound quite effective so far this year, but could it be the long-term solution to supporting the consumption market in China?
Well, there are indeed critics like this. People say that government subsidies for the trading new policy is not a long-term solution. On the one hand, the trading policy will cause some consumers to bring forward their future consumption plans and concentrate on buying goods in response to the policy stimulus. But the overall consumption capacity of consumers is fixed over a period of time. So bring forward spending means possible insufficient consumption in the future. And once the policy incentives are weakened or canceled, consumers may lose some of their interests in buying new products. And once you've traded in your old car for a new one, you will probably not buy another car in the following years. So the potential demand in the market will gradually decrease. And on the other hand, the government subsidies supporting the trading policy can be a burden on government finances. So people are also questioning how much money the government will spend on it. And as time passes and the policy scope expands, if the government finds it difficult to sustain high levels of subsidy spending in the long run, the implementation of the policy may not last long. But the key purpose of the policy is not to make people rely on tradings forever. I'd rather see it as a tool to help the country mitigate the negative effects of economic downturns, to smooth out the economic fluctuations and promote stable economic growth. So instead of worrying about how long the government's trading policy will last, we'd better focus more on how effective it is in counteracting the current economic downturn.
But of course, many investment companies expect this policy to continue into the next year and maybe even expanding to covering more categories and products for 2025. So how is this policy of trading for new expected to impact China's consumer market and economy for the long run?
Well, we can take a look back at 2008, when China encouraged tradings for home appliances to get through the global financial crisis. Within the 3 years after 2008, the Chinese government allocated subsidies of 30 billion yuan to support the trading policy, which has led to direct consumption of over 340 billion yuan. That is over 11 times of the subsidies. And this year, China has channeled 150 billion yuan from its ultra-long special treasury bonds to fund consumer goods tradings. That is 5 times of the national subsidies in 2008. And financial institutions forecast that the trading policy will continue throughout the year or maybe expanded to around 500 billion yuan next year. And the categories of subsidized products are also expected to be expanded. So a lot to expect from how much the subsidies will bring to the market. And the trading policy and the stimulation package as a whole can also help to solve many other problems during economic fluctuations. For example, more job opportunities will be created, especially in production, logistics, and sales. And stable employment can further promote consumption, and this will form a virtuous circle. Another benefit is in industrial upgrade. Once the consumers have scrapped their old products and bought new ones, companies will have to put more efforts in research and development to add more selling points to their products to make them like smarter and greener. And this will in turn appeal to consumers in the near future. And this is another virtuous circle. So even though the trading policy will not last forever, it will have a long-term impact on the Chinese market and economy.
But the subsidies sound great. I cannot wait to upgrade my phone to a newer model.
Yeah, worth a try.
Thank you very much for joining this episode, Hongyu.
Thank you for having me.
Consumption currently makes up around 47% of China's GDP. However, experts and industry insiders argue that increasing this figure to over 60% will be critical for the country's long-term economic growth. As policymakers work to sustain this momentum, many are watching closely to see what new incentives will emerge, and just as importantly, how effective they will be in driving the next wave of consumer spending. That brings us to the end of this episode of Deep Dive. If you enjoyed what you just heard, don't forget to follow us on your podcast platforms. Just search for Deep Dive. You can also leave a comment to let us know what you want to learn about China and beyond. This episode is brought to you by me, Li Yunqi, and my colleagues Zhang Zhang and Qi Zhi. Special thanks to CGTN radio reporter Dou Hongyu. I'll see you in the next one.